Welcome, everyone. I'm Laurel Staples for NBC Montana. We're taking a closer look at cancer cases in U.S. service members working at nuclear missile sites. A new story published in KFF Health News details a memo on a potential cancer cluster at Malmsmtrom Air Force Base in Montana. A massive investigation followed. And reporter Patricia Kime joins me today to talk about her article. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into this. Walk me through the memo.
In late 2022, 2023, a Air Force officer, Lieutenant Colonel Danny Seebeck, he's been diagnosed with a type of cancer, blood cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He started learning that some of his buddies who served with him at Malsmtrom also had similar cancers, if not non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, other types of cancer. His concern, uh, he was worried about the Space Force, which has about 400 of these members of the missile community who serve in the Space Force. So that's a significant number of Space Force guardians. He wanted to alert the Space Force that there may be an issue with cancers. So he looked at deaths in that community, and he looked at cancer diagnoses, and concluded that he had found like 36 cancer cases, 11 of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. These are at various bases that were nuclear missile bases, but he did determine that there were issues that hadn't come to light yet.
All right, so an investigation followed. Tell me about that investigation, where things stand right now, and what's next with it.
So the Air Force has done extensive research on this cancer clusters. What they have done, they have looked at each of the bases, Warren Air Force Base, Minot, and Malmstrom, as well as Vandenberg, which is a launch facility. They have conducted environmental studies to determine if there was anything at those locations that may contribute to cancer. They also are doing epidemiological studies. So they're looking at all the cases of cancer in the Air Force. They're looking at all the cases in the missile community. And then they're also trying to bring in data from states regarding veterans and to determine whether there are higher rates of cancer occurrences and also of deaths in this community.
What are the results so far?
They have found some elevated rates of lung and breast cancer, but then later have looked at the data and think that might not be true. And then they have not found elevated rates of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which was the main one that Colonel Seebeck and his colleagues are concerned about. But they have warned that not all the data is in, and they're looking at the state data, so they're going to crunch all those numbers. They, in a town hall last week, said that they're going to do the statistical analysis, but they're also going to partner with some colleges and universities to also look at their statistical analysis and make sure it's accurate. So we'll get a clearer picture of that. The other thing they have found is that it doesn't appear that there's any environmental contaminants that may have contributed, except at Malmstrom. They have found polychlorobiphenyls, PCBs, which is a cancer-causing agent that was used in manufacturing in the early 70s. So they have found elevated rates inside like the actual missile launch control facilities. So they're taking a closer look as to whether those PCBs may contribute.
So even though the final results are not in, what kind of reaction are you getting so far?
Well, the veterans and the service members are concerned. In order to qualify for veterans benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs, currently they have to prove that their cancer is service connected. So without data linking the two, it makes it more of a challenge. That's not to say they're not getting VA benefits. One of the veterans I spoke to is getting temporary benefits, even though he has a terminal condition. I don't understand why he's been awarded sort of a temporary disability rating, but they're hoping that there's going to be some kind of link that will help them give them better access to benefits.
Sure. And are they calling for any other changes?
Because of the way that the study is being done, there's been some interest in Congress. Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska has called for an independent review that's not done by the Air Force. The National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. Representative Bacon would like to see them really, take a look at the issue and see if there is a connection. The Senate also would like to see deep cleaning of these facilities every 5 years. That said, they actually are going back currently and deep cleaning these places. They've changed some of their practices, such as burning material inside these very enclosed launch control centers and making sure that like water is not seeping through the ground and leaking into these places where these airmen, stay for 24 hours at a time. So the Air Force is taking steps, but Congress is interested in making sure that they continue to be vigilant regarding this issue.
Describe what this work is like on these bases. And I know you sent us some images as well to show that.
So the community that seems to have been most affected are the people who work in what's called the launch control facilities. And anybody who's ever seen, a Hollywood movie about like the two people that are living underground and they've got their keys and they turn them at the same time to do the launch. Those are actual facilities. Like that is, basically these Air Force officers, sent down, they stay there for 24 hours at a time. They live, they work. That's what they do down there. That's the community that seems to have been most affected. However, I've heard from vets who are like, well, I did work near the silos. I worked near the missiles. That's what's going on in those photos. The Air Force is taking a look at the large population that served, regardless of where you served in the, missile silo or missile community. They're trying to determine if there's any connection.
Does anything specific stand out for you when it comes to Malmstrom Air Force Base, since that's the one that's here in Montana?
So Maelstrom has been determined to some of the locations they've looked at have had higher rates of these PCBs, which is a concern. And I'm hearing, and they noted on the town hall last week, they're trying to clean up the PCBs, but when you go in there and you try to clean these surfaces and clean them up, they're also stirring up years of, dirt and dust and they have electronic panels that had PCBs, and when you go to clean them up, it just stirs up stuff. So their concern is making sure that these places are completely clean. They're having some issues with just the cleanup actually sort of elevating the contamination temporarily, but they're also taking huge precautions in the groups that are doing this cleanup are taking wearing the appropriate hazmat stuff and, that kind of thing. But that is a big concern at Malmstrom.
Well, what are some of the other big takeaways from your research in putting this article together?
The takeaways it's challenging always to sort of connect military service, especially if you have an environmental exposure with a type of cancer, or when you get cancer, what else you might have been exposed to. There was a study at UNC, University of North Carolina, took a look at some of this data, and they have raised concerns that the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is occurring in this population at younger ages. So, that might be a way that they can sort of take a look to see if this is connected. Because if it's we all have a lifetime cancer risk, right? We're all exposed to all sorts of things out there. In fact, the Air Force mentioned that like benzene is a contamination on base because of gasoline fumes and things like that. So we all have these exposures, but when cancers are occurring in a younger population, that's always a big why. And so, hopefully moving forward, they'll be able to figure out, what is going on here.
So that just leads me into the next question. Next steps as we start to close the interview.
The next steps would be, we're waiting for the final report from the Air Force to see what they conclude. Depending on that, again, there's a nonprofit called the Torchlight Initiative that Colonel Danny Seebeck is a co-founder of that. Depending on what comes out of that, I can see that group really trying to press for recognition with the VA and trying to make sure that their members have easier, expedited access to veterans benefits if they get sick, if they're not sick already.
All right. Will we see another article from you when those results come out?
You sure will.
All right. Yes.